Concealing Fate, Chapter 6. They ordered wine, of course, and a table of cheese to go with it. Just something to nibble on while they talked and drank, to keep their stomachs from going sour. Her eyes lit with that charming delight when she took her first sip of the wine, and it pleased him to know she could recognize an excellent vintage when it was presented to her. It would not do for him to fall in love with a woman who had no taste at all for wine. "Tell me about your family," he said, dropping into English after the waiter left them. It was as good a place to start as any. "You do not strike me as a woman who alters her plans for a man she's only just met, and I can only imagine that you had planned already to return so early from your break." She made a face, an adorable wrinkle appearing between her brows. "There really isn't much to tell." "Then tell me what little there might be," he said, smiling. "Do you have siblings?" "A younger sister," she admitted, and not without a certain amount of resignation. "Spoiled rotten by my mother, and an absolutely determined flirt. My parents are always making excuses for her, and of course I'm always the villain for suggesting that she take more responsibility for herself. As you have," he said, tipping his head in the direction of the library, "at Sorbonne." "It isn't fair of me, maybe," she said. "We're very different people, and I shouldn't expect her to be anything but immature, young as she is, but I can see so clearly how it could hurt her." "Of course," he said. "I know the feeling well. I have no siblings myself, but the way my cousin carries on, it cannot be so different, truly. I have the misfortune now of sharing a flat with him. My aunt hoped I might become a moderating influence, I think, but she only fools herself. Jean will always be Jean, and until he suffers some consequence for his actions, he will not change." "Exactly," she said, "exactly. Until she's forced to take some responsibility. But of course she won't. My parents will never make her. But for men, the consequences are different, far less dire, unless they choose otherwise. Men can walk away from their mistakes without being forced to make impossible choices." He laughed, leaning forward. "You are truly a feminist, then. You speak of the inequity with such passion." "I suppose that I am," she agreed. "In the truest sense, I believe in equality, if nothing else, not only between men and women, but the rich and the poor, across class and race and all genders." "You make a poor Englishwoman, Abby," he said. "It is clear to me that you belong here in France, where your passion is not an affront to society, and your dream of liberté et égalité will be more properly appreciated and admired, even embraced. We in France, we are forward-thinking in many of these same respects." "Maybe that's why France has always felt like home," she said. But it was with that secret smile of hers that she had hid behind her wineglass. Not a true agreement. "Not just that, I think," he said, nudging the cheese in her direction. "There's something more, isn't there?" She shrugged. "Just a dream, maybe. One I should let go of, perhaps." "Are you really the kind of woman who lives with her head in the clouds, who cannot see the world around her for the fantasy of her dreaming?" he asked, surprised to hear her suggest such a thing. Whatever it was she dreamed of, he was certain it could not be so unreasonable as that. She could not believe as she did and not see the world through clear eyes. "I didn't used to be," she said, that small wrinkle appearing again between her eyebrows. "But more and more I wonder. The things I've experienced." She pressed her lips together, silencing herself with a shake of the head. "I used to be better at living in my present, but it feels like lately I've spent more time looking back." "To London?" he asked, his stomach sinking. If she didn't wish to stay in France. "No," she said, toying with her wineglass, her gaze still turned inward. "No, I'm not interested in returning there. I don't even care for the time I have to spend there during my breaks, to be honest. My family, sometimes they feel like strangers to me. That's part of the problem, though. My parents and my sister. Shouldn't I want them in my life? Want to maintain those connections?" He stilled her hand on the glass's stem, covering it with his own. "We are not all so fortunate in the family we are born to that we find ourselves embraced fully, enveloped in nothing but love and support. If you do not feel as though you belong with them, perhaps it only means you have yet to find your true home, the family of your heart." She let out a breath of something, relief or surprise, he was not certain, but her gaze met his, her green eyes filled with longing. "It's exactly that. Exactly. I cannot think of anything more sorrowful than giving up the dream of finding such a people, such a place, he said gently, brushing his thumb across her fingers, his heart leaping when her fingers closed upon his in return. I would not want you to live a life like that. I would not wish such a life even upon my enemies, and perhaps that is what this is now, this sudden connection growing between us. Perhaps we were meant to find one another just now, so I could tell you not to give up. Do you really think that's all this is? She asked, twining her fingers with his. And if she felt even half of what he did, the warmth of it, the lurch deep inside his soul, he wouldn't blame her if she never let go. Just a moment of serendipity, ships passing in the night of our lives. Who can know, he wondered. If we live in this present together, we can take it only one moment at a time. She bit her lip, her gaze on their hands, her forehead furrowed still. You're going to fall in love with me, aren't you? He breathed something near a laugh, his chest too tight for more. It wasn't a question, not truly. It was as though she knew already how it would end, had danced this dance 1,000 times before. And maybe she had. Maybe men had been falling in love with her for the whole of her life. Would it distress you if I did? Even feeling what I do, what I can, it's too soon for me to know, she said, not for certain. Then let's not look too far ahead just yet, he suggested. Let's just drink this glass of wine together, and after we can decide if we want more. More of each other, she asked, looking up. He smiled, squeezing her hand and then forcing himself to let her go, to prove to both of them that he still could. How about just more wine to start?